Hereditary is one of those movies that I believe needs more than one viewing to actually get it right. It deserves 2 or 3. I watched it the second time and I think it's time to make another video on this movie. My first video I made on Hereditary dealt more with explaining what happened chronologically and then my thoughts on the ending. This video, however, will just go all over the place and notice all the little details I noticed the second time of viewing it, and more understanding the ending now that I've seen it a second time. And by the way, this movie talks a lot about the art. I also have a page where there is some awesome artwork for sale. You can definitely go check out below. I would truly appreciate that if you did. But anyways, if you haven't seen Hereditary by now, you're probably on the fence of it because of the polarizing reviews. I'm just here to say, if you enjoyed movies such as The Witch, imagine A Witch but with a little more scare in it, and I think that's what Hereditary is. I think it's a far superior film than The Witch, and many would disagree, but that's fine. But I still don't think it should get such a low score as it's getting. But let's just get into what exactly I found out the second time of viewing this movie. Before we can get into any details, we have to go through exactly what happens in this movie. This movie basically, at its core, is just a family that gets a curse inherited on them. And this is from the grandma, who was the cult leader in this occult group that is trying to raise King of Hell. The King of Hell, of course, is Payman. The curse basically travels like this: Ellen, the grandmother; Charlie, the granddaughter; Annie, the daughter; Peter, the grandson. And the whole movie basically deals with that. As we see Ellen die, the curse gets onto Charlie. Then as Charlie dies, it goes to Annie. And when Annie dies, it goes to Peter. And then we have our ending. Peter is ultimately Payman. And we come on to find out that Payman needs a male host. This is why Ellen always wanted for Charlie to be a boy, because she never had a chance to get close to Peter because Annie would not let that happen. And I believe a reason for this is because of Annie's brother, who ultimately committed suicide, because I think Ellen wanted him to be Payman's body at first. And I think that Ellen is the one that gets to choose who is going to do this, because ultimately, as we see at the end of the movie, that she is the queen. We see her picture and it says Queen Ellen. So we know that she is the queen to Payman, who is the king of hell. So she is the queen of hell, if that makes any sense. But a lot of details that I noticed also are the words Satoni, and then I think we see one that says Panomium and all of this good stuff. I saw them written throughout the house and whatnot, on different walls and whatnot. And the first time I watched it, I didn't really pay attention to these words. Second time, I was paying more attention because I already knew what the movie was about and what was going to happen at the end and whatnot. So I was like, okay, this time I'm going to focus on as much detail as possible. And I did notice all these words scattered throughout. What I also noticed were that these words were actually being spoken as well by Annie and Joan during the seance, and also when Joan was trying to expel Peter from his body. So these words were implanted in the house, I think, sort of as a sort of binding spell as well. So they were already written there, and they were an expelling curse of sorts. So I think that's a big reason they were written on the walls of the house. Also, something I noticed was that the symbol for Payman is actually 3 like bodies of sorts, and that actually is 3 heads also. So we can assume that this is why Ellen, Charlie, and Annie had to be decapitated, because the demon, as it said, needed 3 heads. And I think this is something that we also see in the book when Annie's reading about it. We see a sort of like drawing of Payman with 3 heads, and I think that was part of the ritual, and one of the reasons maybe the ritual didn't work in the past. Something I also noticed second time viewing it is that the people in the support group that Annie goes to after her mother dies and Charlie dies, I see a lot of them in the end of the movie, and they are part of this cult. A lot of viewers also are saying that some of Peter's teachers are in this cult, which I'm not too sure. I think I saw one of them, but I wasn't too sure if that was him or not. So I'm not going fully into that, but people in the support group I did see for sure. So it looks like the support group was always there to make sure that Annie was right on track to do this ritual and wouldn't diverge. As we saw when she was about to diverge after Charlie's death, Joan just came out of nowhere and was like, no, let me help you, let me help you. Yeah, right, let me help you. Also, something I noticed the second time, and something I thought about the first time I watched this movie, was when Annie claimed she was sleepwalking and was about to kill Peter and Charlie by burning them. I think this was Annie's subconscious being like, you know what, your kids are going to be part of this big ritual and whatnot. Best thing to do for them is just for them to die. And I think this was her subconscious talking to her. And I think because Annie knew what was going on before this and just try to bury all of this like occult stuff that her mother had passed down onto her, because she didn't want no part of it. And I think her subconscious was just telling her this is the only way. This is why I believe that she awoke from that, because Charlie was one of the people that was gonna get basically killed, and I think that Payman was already inhabiting Charlie's vessel, and he was like, hell no, you're not. Also, something interesting about the movie is that the set was also built sort of as Annie's miniatures as well. And I think this has to do with the cult manipulating the family throughout the movie, because no accidents happen in this movie, in my honest opinion. I think it's all been orchestrated for it to happen as it should, even Charlie's decapitation death. Because before we get to the party when Charlie is going with Peter, we see the pole where she ultimately dies has the little symbol like in it, and we're just like, holy crap, I didn't notice that the first time I watched it, but the second time I watched it, I completely noticed that. Also, Charlie knows she's allergic to nuts, and she sees this girl just chopping away on those walnuts. Why the hell would she eat this cake? And also, I saw a piece of the cake when they had a little close-up of it, and all the cakes, you could see the nuts in them. So I think Payman overtook her body and was like, now we're gonna get that nut allergy. Because a lot of people point out that she was also eating peanut M&Ms, which I'm not too sure, because the wrapper didn't look golden like the peanut M&Ms ones does. But anyways, that's besides the point. I think everything is orchestrated. The cult knew what was gonna happen, and they knew when it was gonna happen. Also, something that's interesting is that Peter's classrooms are always talking about something that relates back to the story, whether it's them talking about characters not having a choice and just being pawns in this game that was already predestined for them, so they had no choice but to just play the game. And also when they talk about gaining wisdom through punishment, and they talk about the characters not having any clue what's going on, even though everything is set out for them to figure it out, but they're just clueless and just narrow-minded basically. And I think this is the audience, as us watching the first time, that we're just like, wait, no, I don't know. But I think one of the biggest things is that ending was foreshadowed by Joan when she set up those little dolls and whatnot, praising whatever came at the end. So yeah, basically I think this movie was just a big ritual, and we got to see it happen in real time. First time we watched it, we probably didn't notice anything about it, maybe little hints here and there, but the second time I view it now, I just see everything happen in the order it needed to happen, and to ultimately raise Payman into the human Earth that we know, into Peter's body. Now, a lot of big questions I see people asked in my previous video on the comments were, why did Stephen burn when Annie burned the book? Wasn't she supposed to burn? I think she was supposed to burn, and that was Payman like saying like, you ain't gonna do this. But once Annie had the guts to be like, I don't care if I die, I'm gonna do this, Payman was like, hell no you're not. So he made Stephen burn instead. And I think this made Annie be more like, holy shit, what the hell's going on? Because I think that Payman is able to really possess a body once that body is really like shooken and like vulnerable, so then it's able to just go in as smoothly as possible. And I think that's a part of the reason it did that as well, because it ultimately inhabited Annie at the end, who he needed to be decapitated, and she ultimately did her own decapitation because she was possessed. So overall, those are just some of the things I found throughout the movie after a second viewing. There's clearly a lot more stuff to go through. Tomorrow, Ari Aster is actually going to be having a Reddit AMA where you can ask him anything you want about the movie. I'm definitely going to be on there as well, so I'll leave a link for that below so you can go check it out tomorrow. I definitely want to find out a little bit more and might make one more video on this movie because I really enjoyed this movie. Let me know your thoughts though. Anything I missed, anything that you noticed as well, comment below and let me know. But overall, I think that the ritual is pretty self-explanatory after watching it. You need 3 decapitations and you need a male body, and I think they all have to be from the same line, especially if Ellen is proclaiming to be the queen. All of this has to be pretty much hereditary basically. So I think that they were always going to die. I think it was already set up by the cult that this was going to happen, and there was nothing that they could do to prevent this, which is kind of sad in a way when you think about it. But overall, I think that is the clear message if you're talking about it being a supernatural type movie. Now, if you're talking about the psychological side of the movie, I do want to make a video about that as well. If you want to see that video, make sure you like this video to let me know, and I probably will do that by the end of the next week. But overall, I enjoy this movie. What do you think? Comment below, let me know if you've seen it already. And as always, that's going to do it for me. Make sure you tune in for more stuff I do on movies, music, games, all that good stuff you love. And as always, I'll see you next time. Stay positive.